bigger is better, or so we thought. But in the world of airplanes, smaller can be better too, as they have better maneuverability compared to bigger planes. We love all things military, right? So today we're going to look at some past and future small aircraft that pack a punch. Welcome back to yet another video of Military Future. So without any delay, can we dig in? But before that, make sure to like and subscribe so you get notified about our future videos. Now 1. HAL Tejas Pocket Fire. The HAL Tejas Pocket Fire is an all-Indian made by HAL or Hindustan Aeronautics Company, owned and operated by the government. This was the cream of the crop for India when they launched the Tejas. Although it has been in plans for more than a decade, the fighter jet only got the clearance to operate as recently as 2019. The dimensions for the HAL Tejas go 13.2 meters lengthwise and 8.2 in width. The plane is almost a whole ostrich smaller than the legendary F-16 fighter jet and was released with much fanfare. The Tejas is the first ever small combat aircraft made by India, but is also the first ever supersonic fighter jet to be made in the country. This is, however, not the first jet to be ever produced in this country, as they had to go at fighter jets quite a few years back and was nicknamed the HAL of Marut, but it would never achieve the supersonic speeds the HAL Tejas can achieve. 2. De Havilland Vampire Spidercraft from Mars. We have come so far with technology that gone are the days that we need to look out for the weight when it comes to an aircraft. The latest modern fighter jets can have all the kit at once and weigh as much as they want due to the increased capacity of all available engines all over the world. Things were always not this good. When jet propulsion was put into use, it proved to be very effective. But there was one problem. The jet engines at the time lacked the power to support massive fighter jets and their payload. So naturally, all the jets had to be small. A fine example of that is the de Havilland Vampire. The jet measures 9.37 meters in length and 12 meters in width, making it a really small aircraft, and not to mention it looked like a frog. The plane stood just 9 feet tall and was the first crack by the Allies to make a reliable jet-propelled fighter jet. The Vampire was not the only one made into production. It also had another sibling, lovingly called the Venom fighter bomber, derived from the Vampire. In Mexico, they have nicknamed the Vampire Aguacate, which means avocado. It is somewhat ironic considering that the Vampire is just 2 avocado lengths shorter than the Venom fighter jet. 3. Mikoyan Gurevich MiG-9 Fargo. When you think about Russia, usually the word big comes to mind. It is the world's largest country, and the tanks and fighter jets and the considerable arsenal of bomber jets they all have are big, so it must be confusing to see a Russian fighter jet in this list. The Mikoyan Gurevich MiG-9 was a product of the Soviet Union. It was manufactured and made all across the Soviet Union when the almighty Stalin was in power. When the MiG-9 was under production, the Soviet Union was going through a phase where they wanted their military jets to be smaller than that of the Americans, and the jet measured in at 9.75 meters in length and 10 meters in width. The jet was pretty successful at the time it was created and was also easy to fly, but it was plagued by several issues, the foremost being that the combustion gases from firing the main gun would enter the intake and cause the jet to catch on fire. 4. Breguet 1001 Talon. Not everyone has a success story, and that is indeed the case with the 1001 Talon, as it was never really mass-produced. Only a few prototypes were made and then eventually dropped, but it did go out with a bang as it broke 2 international speed records before being grounded forever. The Talon, or also known as the Horsefly, was made by the French when NATO in 1953 wanted a universal lightweight strike fighter jet. The Talon measured 11.68 meters in length and 6.8 meters in width, making it a small jet. But the Talon, along with many other small fighter jets built in response, were all scrapped or never saw it to the production line. NATO later dropped the idea of having an ordinary lightweight stroke fighter jet, and pretty much every country went its way. The French dropped the idea of a small jet altogether and just went with more extensive and more powerful fighter jets like the Dassault Étendard 6. 5. Lavochkin La-15. Going back to the early era of Soviet jets, here's another fine example, the Lavochkin La-15. These jets were also built closely with the MiG variants as well as the La-15 as it existed at the same time as the MiG-15. I'm sure you can see where the Soviets were going with this. Built just after the war, the jet featured a shoulder-mounted swept wing and a noticeably tall wing at the tail was all the rage at the time, and the Soviets were quick to jump on board when they made the La-15. The idea to build such small planes with distinctive features was a German idea at the time, and the Lavochkin La-168 was the first jet from the Soviets that had a swept wing and tall tail wings. The LA-15 measured 9.56 meters in length and 8.83 meters in width. Sadly for the LA-15, it was going up against the MiG-15, and as you well know, pretty much every MiG ever created was light years ahead of its time, although the LA-15 had more maneuverability than the MiG-15. The MiG was better than the LA-15 in every which way and was also less expensive to build. 6. Hell-1 HA-300. Most of us know someone who's bilingual or knows more than 2 languages. Here we have an aircraft with multiple origin stories that passed through a few hands before it was even put into production. Still, the story doesn't have a happy ending. The plane is thought to be one of the last fighter jets to be ever designed by the late Willy Messerschmitt. It was later supposed to be made for the Spanish Air Force, but was eventually cancelled due to lack of funding to build such an aircraft. And later, Egypt finally bought the plans and produced the fighter jet, calling it the Hell-1 HA-300, and the name Hell-1 comes to form the city which it was built in, which is ironic considering the Spanish called the plane the Hispano aircraft. The fighter was 12.4 meters in length and 5.84 meters in width. Egypt also wanted to make an indigenous engine for the fighter and was also helped and funded by India as well, so it could use that engine in its aircraft. In the end, it was deemed too costly and only 7 were ever produced, and Egypt opted for the cheaper Soviet planes instead. 7. Folan Chinat Hal Ajit. Most likely the most widely used plane in this list and also a Hollywood star, this fighter jet has done it all except for being used as a fighter jet by the country that made it. Ironic, isn't it? The Knot was made by the company Folan, and the jet measured 9.04 meters in length and 6.73 meters in width. The jet was named after an insect and was mainly used as a fighter jet by India, where they made an indigenous version of the jet called the Hal Ajit, as the jet went against the F-86 Sabres, which were owned by Pakistan and turned them into heaps of junk. Finland and Yugoslavia were also impressed by what the Gnat could do, and they too had some in active service. However, the British never used the jet in a combat situation. The jet was widely used by the RAF Red Arrows, which is an aerobatic team from Britain. In 1991, the jet also featured in a hit parody called The Hot Shots and was called the Oscar EW 5894 Phallus Tactical Fighter Bomber in the movie. This is one fighter jet that made its name across the world. 8. McDonnell XF-85 Goblet. This is unmistakably the smallest fighter jet to be ever made, and this was also called a parasite as the main goal of this fighter was to be carried along inside huge bomber aircraft and then deployed when there was a threat. The Goblet measures 4.52 meters in length and 6.53 meters in width. The plane featured folding wings and a specially made launch pad built into the bomber. However, with 5 out of 7 test pilots crashing and the amount of space it took, they were soon thrown into the junk pile and were never looked back on. What do you think about these rather cute but powerful miniature jets? It does show that sometimes good things come in small packages. We hope you enjoyed this video and hope to hear more about your thoughts on these small fighter jets.